Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barbin. Let's talk football.
Yeah, Dover is traveling. He's in Arizona right now. That's why
forgot to mention that last episode.
Yeah, that's why he doesn't have the wonderful studio with the helmets and our sign in the background. But
slowly making my way across the continental United States towards Barbin, so that I can do some combined recordings coming up this week or next week.
Next week, and then both of us will be here in the studio, and you can actually see there's more stuff off screen that kind of looks cool too. I have a custom map of the NFL, and I don't know, it's pretty cool. Anyways, but we're reviewing Week 16 of the NFL. What'd you think? I think it won. I definitely think it beat college.
You had that feeling going into it, didn't you?
Yeah,
it was good. It needed to have a couple of good games to beat it, to be honest. And at one point, it wasn't going to do that, but it did. Overall, I think it edged it out, just because really the NCAA games. I don't think it's the NFL won the week. I think the NCAA lost the week. So that's how I'm going to look at it.
Uncompetitive games, and I think the expectation, like we had the first round of the first ever 12-team playoff, and all 4 games were basically uncompetitive, which is really a bummer.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's just like when you go see a movie, right? If you're super excited for a movie and it's like okay, then it's
the
bad.
Trailer sells you. The worst that's ever happened to me was the first Suicide Squad movie.
Absolutely. I remember when you saw that trailer, you said that was the best movie you've ever seen.
The trailer itself.
The trailer, yes.
And after watching the full movie, the trailer is still better than the movie.
Exactly.
Anyways, all right, shall we get to it?
Let's do it. NFL recap.
Yeah, we're gonna do best and worst. Then I've got some coal and some flowers. All right. So the number 3 best thing I saw, and they got the shirt, is finally Michael Penix. Finally. I've been waiting for this all year. Finally, he gets to start.
Multiple episodes.
God damn it. Did he look good or what?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I thought he looked okay. Like, it was his first game.
What do you mean okay?
He was
on point. He was accurate. He looked poised. You got to give him more than okay.
It was a good first start. He looked like there was some as I told you, we texted back and forth a little bit, but his wind up was a little long. It feels like to me, and I don't know if I just didn't notice that before.
Jesus
I thought
Christ,
he had more incompletions than he was really accurate at Washington.
Yes,
and he had some.
He was accurate there too.
He had some more incompletions than I thought. So, but it was a good first game. But it doesn't. To me, that didn't shout out like, oh, they should have started him the whole season. That's to be honest.
That's exactly what I got from it.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
And the one pick, Jesus Christ, Kyle Pitts. What is with this guy?
That shouldn't go down as a pick. That should go down as like a fumble recovery or something, because it was I
almost think that statistic needs to be reevaluated as, was it actually the quarterback's fault, or was it the receiver, or was it like tipped or something? Because that just goes down as 0 touchdowns, 1 pick, when that should have been the setup. If that wasn't going to be a touchdown, that should have at least been like the setup for a touchdown play.
That's a good point. That'd be like sort of in hockey, where you've got 2 points for the win, but then you have like a 1 point for an overtime loss, or so, you know what I mean? Like, so if you had 5 picks, but if at the end of the season you had 34 touchdown passes, 2 picks, and then 3 picks off tip balls, right? Like a 34, 2 and 3. Like that
kind of like you can get half a sack. You should only get half a pick. I mean, that's just not his fault at all. Hit him in the hands, and an idiot can't catch.
But my thing from that was like, Pitts should be so much better than he is. Like that should never happen at that high. He is a high level athlete. He always has been.
Yeah. I had him in my list of worst evers, but then I switched to a lump of coal. But he has just gone straight down since his rookie season.
I know.
And he just keeps getting worse. I mean, physically, he's so gifted. I think people thought he was going to be what Brock Bowers is.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he's just completely fallen off.
Right. And maybe not leading the NFL in receptions, but like a Gates or someone that's get a lot of touchdowns, maybe because it's such a mismatch in the red zone. Like I don't know.
He's essentially has Megatron's body.
Yeah.
And his rookie season, he's in the top 5 ever tight end rookie seasons. So it all started off like it was going to happen, and then then you get this.
Yeah,
1 reception, a couple of targets. He doesn't even look like he's in the game. Anyways, why are we talking about that idiot? Michael Penix. Okay, so Dover's being really harsh. I thought Penix looked really good for his first start. Granted, it's against the Giants. Actually, kind of smart to start him there. He was accurate. He looked poised. If you're gonna, if you want to be okay, so you weren't very charitable. I'll be charitable as a first start.
I said it was a good first start. So
Anyways, against a weak team, probably a smart way to do it. He was pretty accurate, regardless of what Dover complains about his windup. I think it looks great, and he just looked like a regular NFL starter. Like, he didn't look overwhelmed. He didn't look like the moment was too big for him or anything. And he just was, every time he completed another, and just check downs or over the middle, in the flats, wherever, he was just hitting people in the hands. And I thought, okay, so that looks like an NFL starter, and no brutal mistakes like Atlanta fans are used to seeing from Cousins over the last 4 or 5 weeks, like 3 and 4 pick games, brutal picks in the end zone or in the red zone. I mean, he just looked collected, calm, cool, poised. Again, against the Giants, maybe that was a calculated move, but I mean, they have a chance at the playoffs here. They can't just be. I mean, Cousins was just falling off. And I actually said this. Everybody at the beginning of the season had such harsh takes about the Falcons paying Cousins and then also taking Penix. And I thought, what's wrong with that? That's such a good move, because there is no guarantee Cousins is going to come back being anything special after the Achilles surgery. Also, Cousins was only ever an average quarterback, and he only has 1 playoff win in 13 seasons, 12 seasons, whatever it is. What makes people think now at 35 after an Achilles he's going to be anything other than just that, the same thing he's always been? And now it's actually worse. He's completely not mobile. If anyone gets near him, it's over. Like, he just crumples to the ground, just like Matt Ryan. I'm sure the Atlanta fans are having PTSD, thinking, oh my God, here we go again. We've got a statue at quarterback who you just got to breathe on him and he goes down. And in this day and age, I keep harping on this, you only win with mobile quarterbacks nowadays. Like, you need a Mahomes type movement caliber. Not all the way to maybe Jackson. We'll call that another tier. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, I'd say, are the very top tier of mobile. Mahomes is just below it, only because he's not so freakishly shifty and fast as those two. But Mahomes gets away from things all the time with his legs, and he extends the play constantly. Jalen Hurts is somewhere right around Mahomes with his.
Jayden Daniels was in there too.
He might even be closer to Jackson and Allen as far as mobility. And then you have the unique mobility of Joe Burrow. He just can extend the play all over the place without necessarily covering a lot of ground. You know what he looks like? Aaron Rodgers in his prime.
Oh, that's
that type of mobility. He can stick around and extend without going more than a few yards away or around the pocket. Just seems like forever until he finally, if he has to, break away. And he can run. He busted off like a 50-yard run earlier this season. So Burrow can do it, but he hangs around the pocket almost like the longest. And Lamar's just, he's doing something different because of his running ability. Anyways, the point is, Penix has some of that in him. I don't know where he fits, but he fits somewhere around the Jalen Hurts mobility thing. And Cousins has none of it. And it seems, I mean, even Rodgers moves better than Cousins right now.
Well, and the other thing I was going to say, another pro Penix point, was that the Atlanta offense has looked really bad the last couple of games, like especially that field goal game where they didn't get a touchdown. And it didn't look like that when Penix was playing, right? So that's a good sign.
And the other thing is, this is the other disappointing. So now we're really leaning into Atlanta right now. The other disappointing thing with that team is they have a 2-headed monster at running back. Algier and Bijan Robinson are legitimate. That line isn't bad. And there's only a few teams in the league that have 2 proper running backs like that, the Lions being the highlight of them all. I'd say the Rams are moving into that category with Corum and Williams. So there's a few teams that can put out the 2-headed monster at running back. I'd say Atlanta's right there behind the Lions. And the makeup of the way this team should be is Pitts is the wild card that was supposed to be producing. If you've got running backs like that, plus essentially what should have been an unguardable tight end. Now you've got the makings of an unstoppable team.
Because then you only need the wide receivers need to be adequate.
Well, London's more than adequate. And then if you add in, and then it's down to another piece on offensive line and a receiver. Which then all of a sudden maybe T. Higgins makes sense in the offseason if they can afford it, or if they hit in the draft, which seems to be easier to do than not nowadays. Guys are hitting all the time in the draft. Anyways, so they're getting close to having, if Pitts was the thing, You can see how, okay, they got the 2 running backs. The line's not bad. Now you got a star tight end. Drake London looks to me like a true number 1, or he's somewhere in that category. If you can add one more piece, now this team's starting to round out on the offensive side. And instead, Pitts is he's just missing. And it sucks because that's like a major, major important piece here. That, to be charitable to Cousins, he just doesn't have that tight end presence that everyone thought he had. So they're kind of one hand behind their back. Anyways, that team is exciting now for me with Penix. I just love when the young quarterbacks are in. He looked good to me, and all arrows are pointing up, at least as far as the Michael Penix thing. I'm guessing from the articles I've seen, Cousins is not long for this team, likely going to be released from some of the articles I've seen in the offseason. I guess they realize, we're not getting anywhere with that type of performance.
Yeah. No, and so listen, the number 3 best thing you saw, Michael Penix, and it's the meaningful games left in the season, so it's so that's a good thing too. So the number 3 thing I was going to say for the best thing I saw in the NFL this weekend were the young up and coming QBs. I got Jayden Daniels and Drake May on the list, and Michael Penix. I'll throw that on there too.
Yes,
that one's just for you, but
don't leave that hanging there. Drake May, he's
right.
He's,
they look great. We talked about this before. It's just so exciting to have the good infusion of young talent coming in there. Jayden Daniels having that, like, essentially the game-winning drive at the end, and the way they came back in that game. And I know that Philly had the backup QB in there, but that was still a really good game. And the way Drake May played against a really good team too. So, and Penix, getting a win. And so that was, that's just exciting to see those young players playing well. So that's what I like the most.
It's a little unfortunate for both the Patriots fans and the Falcons fans that they had to wait as long as both teams did to see what the future is likely or could have been, or it might be. And now the sample size for Drake May, I think, is already enough that you've got like a legit player there. Like he just looks like he's got all the pieces. And sample size of 1 game with Penix, that must feel a lot better than what the hell ever Cousins was doing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the fans are both those fan bases are probably happy with where things are going, and Washington. I mean, that guy, what the sense I get from Jayden Daniels is no matter how ugly the game is going, he somehow will be able to pull it out in the end.
Well, it's true. And I got it's a little inconsistent now. It's not Anthony Richardson inconsistent, but there's when he puts the running in with the deep, accurate throws together, then it looks unstoppable. And it doesn't look like that all the time right now. But oh man, when it does, when he hits it, it looks incredible. So really exciting to watch.
The only shaky thing there is the run game seems to depend on him, which could get him hurt. They need to improve that. But our arrows are up for them too. All right, number 2 best thing I saw was the Vikings Seahawks game.
Yeah,
that was just pure entertainment front to back. Kind of a heartbreaker for the Seahawks. Like it looked like Smith had the drive to win the game, and then the Vikings are just better.
Yeah, they're a really good team. They're the ones that are starting to win, like find a way to win, and that's what a good team does, kind of thing. But no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and now the talk is they got to keep Sam Darnold. They can't just. I mean, it would be insane if they just put JJ McCarthy in after this type of performance. I've been watching a few podcasts and reading some articles saying they have to at least franchise tag him, if not sign him to a deal. Otherwise, half of the league is going to line up to hand Darnold the Baker Mayfield contract. At least. Like, do you think the Saints right now would be happy to sign Darnold for whatever he wants? The Jets could do it. The Giants could do it. I mean, imagine him going back to the Jets. He probably wouldn't. He probably would. I bet you.
I don't know.
It
depends about. I never understand what some athletes do about money and contracts and where they choose to go, and going to like a terrible place, but like for a bit more money. I never understood that. So who knows what he would do, but for sure the best option. I mean, I think he's struggled for a while, and now he's hitting it. So, to take a franchise deal or to take, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what he chooses to do there, because you don't know if McCarthy's going to hit. You don't know what McCarthy's going to be like physically or how long, like he hasn't played quarterback for a year, so I don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back. So,
and he's never played at the NFL level.
No, and it's for me. I'm sure Darnold would want like a 6-year deal or something, but if there's Minnesota, I'd try to give it like a really nice 3-year deal and then see what happens. But
yeah, and I've just recently read an article this morning saying why not do or at least they're speculating. I don't know if this was sourced. The journalist was speculating that they might do the Jordan Love thing, sign Darnold for 3 more years, and JJ McCarthy can sit. I mean, he's young.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
there's nothing wrong with that. I love
nothing wrong with that.
I love when they do that, and they can't do it as much anymore now, right. I guess. But when it happens, I think it's good that Michael Penix had a chance to sit for a while, and come back. So and Jordan Love was like that, and it's rare when Bryce Young is even playing better after he sat for a bit. So who knows? But I don't. If they go into next year as without Darnold and JJ's the guy, I'll be shocked because I just can't believe that.
There's no way Darnold has to be on this team and the named starter for next year. There's just no. Yeah. What are they? 13-2.
Yeah.
What exactly is going on right now that's not good enough?
Yeah.
I can't see any scenario. I don't think it even matters what happens in the playoffs. I mean, this isn't just a playoff team. Is anyone in the NFC really look any better than them?
No, they look really. I mean, at Detroit, but they're really
okay.
Good.
If Detroit and the Vikings end up in the NFC Championship game, who would you take right now? Assuming injuries stay the same on both teams, so no major guy comes. It's not like all of a sudden Hutchinson's back.
Maybe Minnesota by an edge, but like it's a real pick'em game, and then that's just because I don't know. I'm getting influenced by the amount of people that are injured on Detroit's defense that I think is just going to catch up to them eventually.
Well, and that's what I said. As they're constructed right now, given the injury situation. Yeah. So, and I'm with you. To me, it's a pick 'em. If not, I'd lean towards the Vikings purely because they just have less catastrophic injuries. And if they actually can get there, regardless and you're going to not keep that quarterback, I just don't. I don't even think it matters what happens. The 13-2, you've got it. This guy has to be the starter.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope they do it.
Anyways, so to finish off my second best, that was a super fun game. Love the way the Vikings play defense. It's kind of high risk, high reward. I'll take that game every time. And the Seahawks, like I said last week, they've been in some wild games. They're just pure entertainment. And that crowd that just felt like an SEC football game. That crowd is, man, it's hard to compete in the NFL. That must be the best atmosphere for watching a game, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, so number 2 best thing I saw was again, I really like it when that's something that happens in the NFL when there's a good team, they just have a bad game and it's really disappointing, or you think they're going to win. Tampa, I'm looking at you. I really thought that was going to be a game that they were going to win. And so the second best thing I saw was just the Packers in Detroit playing like they're supposed to. Like that was the Packers. The New Orleans isn't a good team. No one was, Green Bay was a 2-touchdown favorite, but they did what they were supposed to do. Like the defense was amazing. They didn't, they scored on their 6 out of the first 8 possessions, and that's what it was supposed to. And same thing with Detroit. They're playing Chicago. It's a division game, but they played well. And they beat them, and it was, that's how it was. I just enjoy watching that because I guess it's really more of sort of a best thing I saw, but also not the worst. The worst thing is when good teams don't win, they just don't play well against the team that they should. So anyway, those are those 2 wins I really like.
Yeah, I'm with you. I understand. Yeah,
and just the way that on paper, New Orleans really had no business scoring any points against Green Bay. Just how is that going to happen going into the game? And
it's almost like there's a. What I'm hearing from you is you appreciate consistency from teams that you think are good, should be good, show up and play as you would hope they would play towards the end of the season here, versus teams like the Bucks showing up. When then as a fan, also sometimes betting on them, specifically looking at you, the Bucks. You just don't know what you're getting. They'll put up 40 points against a strong team like the Chargers, and then they'll just have what they just had happen against what should be. I mean, and it matters. Like they're fighting for a playoff spot with the Falcons, and they put in they lose to the Cowboys.
Well, and they were in a position to win it too. Like there was a couple of things that happened in that game that they were, so
I totally get what you're saying. So somebody somewhere's got to be consistent.
Yeah. And so you're absolutely right. It's the consistency part. And it's one thing if you lose a game on a blown call to ref or a pass interference or a tip ball or something, but like that's when they go out and they take care of business, I have an appreciation for that. And those Green Bay and Detroit did it this week.
Yep. All right. So number one best thing I saw was the Colts setting the franchise rushing record. They went for 335 yards, I think it was. And specifically Jonathan Taylor learning his lesson. And the best thing he did was when he burst out for that first 70-yard touchdown, he ran through the end zone into the tunnel. Did you see this? And then when he came back out of the tunnel, the touchdown celebration was all his teammates trying to pull the ball out of his hands, and he wouldn't let the ball go.
Yeah.
So I roasted him last week for dropping the ball. This week, it seems as though he learned his lesson. I don't know who said it. I'm hoping the coaches said, don't you ever drop the ball.
I think it was numerous people sent that message.
And if these guys are young, if he noticed on social media, people were shredding him for being an idiot. And I was one of them. Obviously, we're tiny. I'm sure he didn't look at me. But somebody influential other than his own coaches, he probably realized, oh, I'm an idiot. Like the country thinks I'm an idiot right now, like the football watching country. And people and I know a bunch of people who have him in fantasy or definitely people were betting on spreads and points. He just threw away 6 points that mattered to a lot of people and people that were betting on you who want to support you. And you kind of just slap them in the face with your arrogance. So good for you for smartening up. They're on the wall somewhere here for that.
Yep.
And good for you for, he went for 215 yards, 3 TDs. I don't know if that's what he's capable of if he puts his mind to it for overcoming that mistake and trying to prove to the country he's better than what he showed us last week. But wow, what a performance. I almost have this as the worst ever for the Titans run defense because
I was going to say this game's on my other list because we'll get for that reason, but it was but you're right. He played well and he ran. It looked like a statement running game from them, and from him specifically. Right. So hats off to him because
that team God, I am such a sucker for Richardson.
He completed 7 passes.
It doesn't matter when you run for 330 yards.
I know.
Every coach and put Harbaugh right at the top of the list, but Shanahan would be on that list too. So would Tomlin. Both Harbaughs. If you could play the whole game, Campbell, and never throw the ball, no coach wants to throw the ball.
Yep.
If you could just run a team over, that 330 yards, forget throwing. What do you need to throw the ball for?
That's more offense total than some NFL teams had this week.
Yes.
And that was just running. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean,
that was someone had that quote some earlier this season somewhere. There's nothing better than running for a first down. Like it's a pivotal, NFL.
And even more so running for a first down on 3rd and medium or 3rd and long.
Yeah.
Like a 3rd and 8 first down run is just backbreaking.
Yes, for sure.
So anyways, that was good for the Colts. Good for Jonathan Taylor for smartening up. Hopefully he's learned his lesson, and I think they still have their window still open for the playoffs here.
Is it? Okay.
I think so. Yep.
That's So my number one best thing I had was just the two games. Well, really it was 3 games, but we've already talked about the Washington, Philly. We've already talked about the Seattle, Minnesota, but I also really liked the Baltimore, Pittsburgh game. Like I thought that was a good game. It was got a little squirrely at the end with some of the turnovers, but that was an entertaining NFL football game. And between 2 good teams. And so I just really enjoyed that. It was both teams. It looked like we're trying to lose it a bit in the fourth quarter, but when Baltimore's on, they look, I don't know how they lost 5 games this season.
I keep thinking that too.
When you have a lead late, you do not want to face Derrick Henry with a lead late. And we've said that a few times. There's some of the other podcasts that mentioned that he's listed at like 240 or 250, but he looks way bigger than that. And he's still fast. There was points in this game where he was running away from people again, which is just incredible considering it feels like he's been in the league a long time. And for to be that big and that fast is really amazing. So Baltimore with the lead, to be able to just hand it off to him in the fourth quarter is just it's one of the best things I've seen in football.
So in contrast to your other best ever of a couple of teams just showing up and doing what the Packers and the Lions doing what they should do, being what looks like could go all the way to the Super Bowl. The Ravens are the reverse. How have they lost 5 games? Like, I still don't really trust them because they can still put in a stinker. I'm starting to trust them more, and they are playing better. But I still don't quite have the confidence they're just going to show up and blast people the way you think they should.
Yeah.
But they're getting there.
Yeah. No, I think that it's 2 of the losses came early in the season. Okay. So I feel like that was just sort of a slow start. And they're 3-4 in the last 4 games, or 3-1 in the last 4 games.
The Steelers have the tiebreak over them in their division,
I know,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
That dropping the game to the Browns and then dropping that one to the Steelers.
Yeah,
and that was like the Steelers
really
shut them down, and that was super surprising given how strong that offense is.
Yeah.
But they look like they're rounding into form, and the AFC needs somebody. They need somebody to compete with.
They've got a game against the Texans and a game against the Browns. And if they win those, then they'll be 5-1 in their last 6 games, and then I feel pretty good about that going into the playoffs. So
agreed. All right, moving on to worst ever.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just a general category. Is pre-snap penalties in the red zone? I'm not picking on any one team. No. As I was watching all the different games, I just kept noticing teams. It's like there's a force field around the 10-yard line where teams just start going backwards, and it's all their own fault. It's not that the other team is sacking them for a loss. It's immediately, and I'm sure fans of whoever's listening, whatever team you're a fan of, I'm sure you can think of moments where your team has done this. The Seahawks specialize in this, is going backwards when you get into the red zones, anywhere in the red zone, but even more typically somewhere within the 10-yard line. I'm just imagining every time I see this happen, I can't believe it keeps happening. And pre-snap penalties frustrate the hell out of me in the NFL anyways, because you're a professional. What are you doing? How do you not know the snap count? How are you not composed at this point? Especially because you and I watch a ton of college football, and this whole podcast is about comparing the two. It's almost like the NFL has more pre-snap penalties. I don't know if the offense is. Yes,
I notice it more in the NFL for sure.
Either the refs are calling it more tightly, and they're not letting people get away with the whole running in motion and then curling towards the line. You can't do that, and you're just inviting the refs to call you on it. So either the refs are calling it more tightly, or I don't know what it is. It just doesn't seem to happen as often in college. And it seems like it's happening all the time in the NFL. And what are you doing? Like, you're one of 11 people that know the snap count, and you still do something wrong, or illegal shifts, 2 guys going in motion at the same time, one of them not setting. This must drive coaches nuts.
Yeah.
And worst is when it's in the red zone. It's hard enough in the red zone to score anyways. Then you just give yards away. So it's frustrating as hell. I'm sure every fan base, it happens to every team. And the degree that I'm noticing it compared to college it's unbelievable. And it's specifically in the red zone. It's just so bad.
Well, that was going to be my point, is that, you've talked before about how frustrating it is to get to the red zone, or even in with like 1st and goal, and come away with either just a field goal or no points, which happens a lot. And what is an absolute killer to that is the pre-snap penalty, right? So when you go 1st and goal from like the 8-yard line, and then it's 1st and goal from like the 15-yard line or something, like it's a world of difference.
Yeah.
The defenses are too good to overcome that at that same distance. And those are just super frustrating. And it's, as a fan, you should come away with a touchdown when you're that close, and you don't, and it's super frustrating.
Something other than 0. And it happens too often. It happens.
0 happens a lot. Yeah.
More than you'd like.
It's always funny when they show the stat when they're, like this team, when they're 1st and goal and they score a touchdown like 64% of the time. And you're like, I thought it would be higher than that, and then they're like, they lead the league or something. Like, it's really crazy. Okay. So even though it was one of the best games that I saw, the 3rd worst thing that I saw in the NFL was just some of the calls in the end of the Baltimore Philly game. There was 2 back-to-back pass interference ones that were brutal, because one looked like a pass interference, the other one did not at all. And it's just crazy that it happens every week. It's really hard to be a ref in the NFL, but man, is it when it feels like it's really swinging the game at some point. It's just super frustrating. And so and I get how the DB looked frustrated when they called that. It's like, what are you talking about? And then because it doesn't get called on some other plays, right? So anyway,
I'll jump in there and I'll add the roughing the passer has got to be sorted out.
Yeah.
It's getting out of hand. That what's being called as roughing the passer, I can't think specifically of the exact games, but in multiple times, the defender just brushed past the QB. Didn't hit him in the head or anything, just sort of caught him on the shoulder, sort of. And you can tell by the defender's body language, he was doing everything he could to not accelerate through the quarter. Anything, kind of just give him a little bump. And the quarterbacks aren't dumb. They know, I'll just allow myself to hit the ground here. I mean, these quarterbacks are almost all of them are really big guys. They cannot, if they want to, they won't go down on that play. They can keep on their feet. Because when they're scrambling, it's super hard to put them on the ground. And in these cases, they know I'll just hit the ground. And the refs, I can't believe the refs are this dim and this stupid. It must just be an initiative that they are just to call it and then always err on the side of calling it. But at some point, this needs to be reviewed. The competition committee has to do something about it. It's just terrible. Or if they're not going to ever change that and make it, if it's not reviewable, and if they're just going to keep calling, you just brush past the guy and it's roughing the passer, then the defenders have to know, unless you've got him with the ball in his hand, don't touch him. Because all you're doing is just giving up 15 yards.
But it's so hard, like when you're running at full speed, trying to hit him, and then in that split second of the ball, and then you just don't touch him. Like
I agree. That's why it's an untenable situation. It's kind of ridiculous.
Sorry, I said Pittsburgh Baltimore game for my worst. I meant the Washington Philly game. Sorry.
So I thought you were referencing plays that happened in both of the different games.
No, but it was mostly the Washington Philly one.
Yeah. That's good correction. Anyway, so I just jumped in with you. Roughing the passer is also just it's untenable.
I think about you when a couple of the Jayden Daniels runs, and he was started to slide, and you could see the defenders like not 100% sure what to do, and it's still close on getting hit, and they just get out of the way. And I think if they converted that to diving, it would be better.
So something's got to be done about all of that. All right, moving on. The second worst thing I saw was a couple of injuries to some important players that have playoff implications. I'm specifically thinking of Tank Dell. That was horrific. So that's torn ACL, dislocated kneecap, and more. Like, how bad is that?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It was it first was reported just a dislocated kneecap, which is still pretty bad, but then the torn ACL. And part of the reason why that they either didn't report both at first, but when if you injure your knee and it swells immediately, you assume ACL till proven otherwise, because the ACL has its own blood supplies. When you tear it, the knee swells up right away. It doesn't really happen with any other injury other than a dislocated kneecap. That's one of the only other things that can get the immediate swelling to the same level. Yeah. So that's probably, if I had to guess, that's why the ACL thing wasn't reported as first when that happened, because it was obviously the dislocated kneecap, and which would cause the swelling, but then they would have, caught the ACL later probably. So, but anyway, that's just a horrendous injury. And it's just anything, whenever you have a torn ACL plus another injury, like either another MCL or accompanying meniscus, it just takes longer to rehab. So that's going to be a significant rehab for him. So
unfortunate that it was his own player that ran into him. Given the research on knee pain, would that be really painful, the dislocated kneecap, or not necessarily?
Yeah, it's really painful. Yeah, because it tears all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of retinaculum and things that is held in place, and it's
Well, it looked awful. Other important injury, Jalen Hurts. If that concussion's significant, he might be done for a few weeks here, depending on how bad it is, and or if he comes back, do we know we've got him back at full strength? I mean, they are in the middle of a great run. The team looks complete. Barkley's having an historic season. They seem to have gotten over their little QB versus the receivers not getting the ball enough. It seems like they're rounding into a serious run at the playoffs and all the way to the Super Bowl. This looks like a Super Bowl team. Well, and then of all the things, your QB is concussed.
I know. And that was something I have in the flowers section for coming up, is flowers for Pickett, because he didn't look bad. like that is they always say, like, next man up, and so you're one play away from going in there, but there's a difference between saying that and actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And Hurts has really been entrenched as a starter for some time, but he looked pretty good. Like that, to me, that was a sign of a good team, of a pretty well-rounded team, where the Pickett could come in, and they were still in that. Like they went up ahead even further after Hurts went out like 21-0 or 21-7 or whatever it was at that one point. So yeah, so like that was good on Pickett, but that really shows you it's a real complete team, and so it was so that concussion that really sucks.
And good on Sirianni and the coaching staff for calling the full playbook. Like he went in and he was immediately throwing important passes. It's not like they just reverted to running. Even with Barkley, you could understand, we're just going to run it. Instead, they just ran the full offense.
Yeah, so that's another sign of a really good team. And AJ Brown looked really good. He's another person for my flowers. So
those are the two major injuries. I don't know if there was others that I'm missing, but those two really stuck out because that's a major playoff implications for both teams. But even more specifically, that could be a Super Bowl derailing injury for
I hope it isn't
the Eagles.
Either way, it's another. Whenever something like this, concussions like this happen to, it's always things like the Tua. Like it's you can only have so many. Like it's each one is worse than. The additive effect is not good, so that's I think, I don't know how many Hurts has had or how many he's reported to have had, or like, because they for sure have had some that were that were caught at some point. But so anyway, I just hope the best for him. Okay, so the number 2 worst thing I had was the Tennessee running the defense, and it's both like, and again, that's great that Taylor had a great game, and he was definitely running like his hair was on fire, and that was super entertaining, and that was a great moment about the tunnel thing. It was good, but for me watching it was unbelievably clear that they're going to run the ball until the other team can stop you, and I can't believe at the NFL level that you can't make an adjustment on defense to like stop it. Like especially how inconsistent Richardson has been, where so like you're going to force them to beat you with the pass, because that's so. But it's just shocking that it's over 300 yards, and they couldn't make the adjustment to stop it. So
and Tennessee's
hats off to Taylor. So like, but that but man, I just at this level, I just can't. I'm surprised at that.
Tennessee has some legitimate defenders, especially up front.
Yes.
And they, to your point, they know it's coming and they couldn't stop it. And so I flip-flopped between if this was a best ever, worst ever. I'm glad you put it on worst ever, because 330 yards rushing, setting a franchise record. Yes, that's a big deal for the Colts to do it, but that's, I think, more indicative of the other team was incompetent.
Yeah, it was apparent to me watching it that that's what they're going to do. And so that means the Tennessee coaching staff for sure picked it up. That's like they're just running it like we don't unless we stop it. That's so
and it's some of that's just on the secondary missing on their angles, because he went off for 2 70-yard TD runs. And I mean, every now and then the front he's going to get through, but somebody's got to get him in the second level, and people just weren't even touching him. They were just all on the wrong angles. Like, he's fast. They should know this.
Yeah.
All right. The number 1 worst thing I saw this week. I've had this as a category a few times. The city of New York.
Oh.
The Jets and the Giants.
It's just similar to what I had, so we'll just do the same one,
but in different kind of ways. The Jets actually look somewhat competent, but utterly creative in blowing games. The coaching staff has no clue how to call a game, make inexplicably bad decisions. And there's like top level talent speckled all over this team. And say what you want about Rodgers, he doesn't look bad right now.
No.
And they
better since Devonta Adams got there.
They find ways to lose games. It doesn't even matter what the level of competition is. They'll find a way to lose the game. And it's complete disaster with the Jets, and the future is completely up in the air. I have no idea what Jets fans think of what's coming. I'm assuming they don't want Rodgers back, but at the same time, who's going to replace him? And that doesn't solve all of the other problems on this team. And I mean, Jesus, and the Giants, they are so far away at this point. I don't even know where to start with them. It is brutal. It is how far they've fallen and how much of a mess they look. And I know Joe Shane is going to be fired at some point. It's not like I have insider information, but how can you keep that guy as the running back they let go is about to set, or has very legitimate shot at setting the single season rushing record in your division? What a disaster these two
this
teams
is
are.
it's an excellent worst thing in the NFL because and so I agree with you. It was, and what I was really struck by is how the two New York teams, like how they looked. Like the Giants are traditionally a really good defensive team, you know, and they lost 34-7, and the Jets should be a good team, and it was an ugly 19-9 game. Like it's you know like it's Rodgers is looking better, but they got 9 points, right? So it's the
two of them put together couldn't break 20.
Oh man, so to have the Giants losing to a rookie QB, although really, you know, good first game. We already talked about that.
That's right.
But the losing to a rookie QB and giving up that many points, and the Jets having you know, really finding new ways to look bad and to lose a really ugly game like that at this point is, you know, was really those were terrible. Those were worse to me than the college games this past weekend. But the other ones, like the Washington, Philly, and the Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and stuff, like those are the games that made the NFL good this week. So,
right.
But those two were not.
Yeah, I feel bad for the fans of both of those teams. At least the Jets fans have they've built up scar tissue. They're used to it. The Giants fans have recent memory of Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So they're probably reeling from this. And at least, I mean, to finish off the point, I'm guessing the Giants fans even have a little bit of hope. And what are the Raiders doing? They just went from first pick to 6th with that win. Yeah. And I don't know if it's locked it in, but it put the Giants back in driver's seat here. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's sort of pathetic. We're talking about the hope for the number 1 pick in a draft where there's no obvious superstar coming out. But yeah, God, what a mess in New York. All right. Mm-hmm. Cole and Flowers.
Yep.
Okay, so the major lump of coal I had was for Kyle Pitts dropping.
Right. Are we doing Flowers first, then Cole, or because we usually
just one quick lump of coal? Do you have coal?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay,
go ahead.
Let's finish on the positive. So the lump of coal for Kyle Pitts for ruining what could have been Kyle Pitts' first touchdown pass, if not setting up for what should have been a touchdown for his team.
Yeah.
It's just, God, he's just fallen off.
Yeah, that's a good one. I also had I feel bad doing this, but it was really more like the Cleveland, we'll just call it the passing game in general. Like there was an article came out about the worst the worst decision teams have made in the last 3 years. And the number 1 was Cleveland with their contract to Watson, you know, but just to see their Dorian Thompson-Robinson, like who's, you know, is just put in a bad situation, but to go 20 for 34 with 2 interceptions, 5 sacks, like it really amplified, you know, how bad that decision was with Watson and that contract. So
yeah, there's no way out of that. Jameis Winston's fun to watch, but he's just as erratic and he can be just as bad as DTR, which is too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you have any more Cole? I just have Flowers left.
Yeah. Me too.
So Flower was going to be for Jonathan Taylor, but we talked about him, so he's already got his Flowers. Ben Johnson for the fake stumble play call with the Lions. That was the best looking thing. And I bought it. I think everyone for a moment bought it that they both fell down.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, when they explained like how it actually worked, did you see what Goff said in the press conference? He said the coach was like, "Can you actually fumble it and pick it back up?" And Goff said, "I don't think so. Let's just kind of go with me keeping it in my hand." And it totally looked like he stumbled.
Yeah.
And Goff said it, and I agree. What really sold it was Gibbs also falling down.
Mm-hmm.
But then he gets up and he chips the end anyways, which was like, oh God, what a great play. And then obviously Laporta 5 yards wide open. And I don't know if this would have worked on every team. Maybe it would have, but God, the Bears just look even worse falling for that play. I kind of wish they never did it and kept it for the playoffs. What an amazing play. I love Ben. I mean, I want him to stay, but how is he not going to get a truckload of money thrown at him by all of these teams?
Yeah, no, for sure. I had Connor on my list of for Flowers too for Arizona. Another good, a lot of rushing yards, a lot of receiving yards. You know, they ended up losing, but like it wasn't his fault. He had a great game. So, and that team, Arizona looks way better when they have the running game, which is something we've talked about in the past. So it was present. This one is just too bad they lost to Carolina.
Yeah, there's question marks about that team and if they can really put it together with Murray at quarterback or not. But Connor's legit. Yep. And sticking with that game, good for Bryce Young and the Panthers for winning that one.
Absolutely.
Because they had a we were on their wagon for a little bit. They had three good games. They lost all three, but they were in all three and could have won all three. And that's against the Chiefs, the Bucks, like some serious teams.
Yep.
Then they kind of dropped an ugly one. But man, bouncing back. Young is looking, it's worth
better.
him having some time here next year. They're looking better. Chuba Hubbard looks good.
Yeah, that was one of my other flowers. He had a great game.
Yeah, so there's pieces on this team, and I like how they're finishing the season here. They're putting some games together here, and that was a good one. And it's not like the Cardinals don't have something to play for. I mean, God, that was bad for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I know. That didn't help.
You got anything else? That's all I got.
Other than Pickett, too, we talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
Like coming in and playing well, and that was a very entertaining game. They could have won it. They lost late, but it's that was hats off to him.
Yep. All right. Well, that's our review of NFL Week 16. And stick around. We've got a couple more episodes queuing up here for our picks of Week 17 in the NFL, and also the college football playoffs round 2 and some of the other major bowl games coming up. All right. Catch you later.